Audrey Tang is a Taiwanese minister and also a free software programmer who has been described as one of the 10 great Taiwanese computing personalities and joined the cabinet as a minister without portfolio. I will mention that it's the youngest minister without portfolio in Taiwanese history, which is very interesting. Minister Tang will outline, integrate our today's three main topics: circular city, open source, and data innovation.
Hello.
Welcome, Incam. Welcome.
Greetings. Yeah, I've been online for a while, but it seems my sound had trouble getting through, but it seems to be working now.
Welcome. I'm really happy that we are connected. Welcome to Center for Architecture and Metropolitan Planning in this way, and welcome to Prague City Data Congress 2020. How are you?
Pretty good. This is 3:30 in the afternoon, and I look forward to have a really good exchange with people here.
Great. I think now it's time for your words. I will be really happy if you join with us and say something about the motto of the Congress. I mean, the future is modular, and something about your work. And after that, we have time for a short discussion. I have some questions here, so I will be happy if you will answer them. So now it's yours.
Okay, thank you. Let me first try sharing my screen and see if you can see my screen. Is this working? Are you seeing my screen? Yes?
Yeah, we can see.
Okay, good. So this is a QR code. Please help me by scanning the QR code or going to slido.com and entering 5028 without the pound sign. Both are the same. And it's a Q&A forum. Usually my talk starts with a very, very brief, like 5-minute opening. And it's driven by the Q&A because of the fact that there's more people in the audience than there is microphones. This is my usual way of interacting with the entire room, as well as anyone who cares to ask me questions. And of course, moderators' questions can also be put there. And maybe you would like to highlight some of the questions on the Slido after my short opening talk. Also, you can like each other's questions. The question with the most number of likes will float to the top. And so that enables me to see where the collective intelligence is headed and where should I focus my attention to answer the questions, if that's okay with you. If that's okay with you, I'll just linger on for a couple more minutes here and before moving to my slides.
Yeah, okay. Thank you for that introduction. I just mentioned that we also use the platform slido.com with hashtag PCDC, which is Slido for whole Congress. So in case you will join our Slido, I will see the questions. In case you will join Slido of Minister Tang, she will see the questions there. So it's up to you.
Sure. I mean, if you use the PCDC one, I will be able to see it too. So, I mean, this is actually the first time that I see the PCDC Slido questions, and there's already some questions. So maybe if you already have joined, feel free to keep posting there. But I will then very flexibly share instead your screen, which is this one.
Awesome.
Okay, all right. So I mean, really there's already some questions there. So sorry for the interruption. I didn't know that there's a PCDC going on. So and there's already questions. So let's start by answering the questions. And please feel free to ask follow-up questions from the moderator. I think this is easier to make a interaction flow. So the first question, the top one at the moment, says, which data we need to be able to predict a pandemic in the future? And should those data be open or should they be secured? This is an excellent question. First of all, I think the idea of collective intelligence is not about just data. Rather, it is about people who are willing to share what they have detected as useful data and surface those into the decision-making toolkit or the nervous system. And so I will share an example from Taiwan, where we have people last December, detecting that there is indeed already some signals that SARS has happened again. And so they just surfaced those ideas on the local Reddit-like forum, which then enabled everybody to just like in the Slido, you're encouraged to like each other's questions. People can like each other's posts in the Reddit-like forums. And so if you can see my screen here, you can see the post, as it were, last December. Let's see if this gets through. Can you see the screen? Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we are.
So I think the collective intelligence, for it to function, the intelligence need to be open source intelligence, meaning that the entire population can look at what each other indicates as important intelligence and then add data on top of those focused issues of the society. So as I mentioned, when Dr. Li Wenliang, the PRC whistleblower, shared on the Weibo, their social media, that there's new SARS cases, and along with evidence, along with data, this got censored and got harmonized, and he got local police institutions that caused him to reprimand for his sharing on the social media. Exactly the same thing has been cross-posted on that very early in the morning in the Taiwan's equivalent of Reddit, the PTT. And so you can see someone with the name No More Pipe reposting Dr. Li Wenliang's whistleblowing, but instead of facing any sort of punishment, people liked that post a lot, which caught the attention of the Center of Disease Control in Taiwan. And then we sent an email to the WHO, which was unanswered, but we see the data that backs it up as genuine. So we just started the health inspections for flight passengers from Wuhan, China, the very next day. And so this tells us that the data is useful if you have a storyteller, in this case, the No More Pipe, that can attribute significance to the data. And also, if the government trusts the citizens to not abuse the freedom of speech. According to the Civicus Monitor, Taiwan is now the only country in the whole of Asia to have an entirely open freedom of speech and freedom of assembly and so on. And this has enabled us to escalate this collective intelligence along with data to the daily Central Epidemic Command Center press conference. And anybody with any sort of idea of where the pandemic is going or whether there's a new virus strain or things like that can just use their very low technology phone and call 1922, which is a single call center number, and that will get to the call center that then will feedback to the Central Epidemic Control Center. And so in Taiwan, when they do this daily live stream and answer all the journalists' questions, they ensure that any new intelligence and any new data gets shared and published upon collection if it has no personal identifiable information. Everything, including the mask rationing and things like that, are published upon collection every 30 seconds. And so the short answer to this question is that, yes, if this has no personally identifiable information, then we should publish upon collection, allowing the entire society to make applications such as maps or voice assistants or dashboards to predict the next turn of the pandemic. However, if this relates to personally identifiable information, then the norm here in Taiwan is that we do not publish any PIIs. We instead rely on traditional contact tracing. And I think the norm for people to collect their own data for bookkeeping purposes, for health purposes, is important. But when they share with tracers and so on, they should only share in a way that is in the aggregate, that is only on the statistics level. So that's my answer to the first question from the anonymous. Now, the second question from Martin Shiravi says, how did the work with big data contribute to the excellent management regarding the containment of COVID-19 in Taiwan? So first of all, as I shared, there is the availability of masks, the prevalence of masks and things like that. But I would highlight another aspect of data application, which is social media. There's a lot of people who think that social media have now become anti-social media because on the entire internet, there's so many places with the reply button And you know that with the reply button, people tend to attack each other instead of going to a collective sense making. But in Taiwan, we have flipped this model around by engaging people on the social media, using the social media ideas of viral, mimetic internet memes, but in a way that promotes this pro-social communication rather than anti-social polarization. And this is what we call humor over rumor. The idea of humor over rumor is that because in Taiwan, we're a completely free country, we cannot take down any post from anybody. We cannot do any censorship. We cannot do a lockdown on the social media. So when the data analytics tells us that there is a popular conspiracy theory going, we cannot go and punish the intermediaries. Instead, within an hour, we use data analytics to figure out what emotion is this viral conspiracy theory or rumor trying to promote. For example, there was a case where there was a tissue paper shortage because of panic buying. And the rumor says because we are ramping up the mask production from 1.8 million to 18 million a day, and it's the same material as mask, as tissue paper, so we will run out of tissue paper soon. And it prompted a lot of panic on the social media. And so because we analyzed this analytics very quickly, this is our prime minister, he wrote this meme out. So he is here showing his buttock and wiggling his buttock, and with a title that says, "Each of us only have one pair of buttock." So this is hilarious. People share this internet meme with a much higher basic transmission rate than the conspiracy theory. But what this meme says is a very serious table that says tissue papers are made out of material from South America, while medical masks are made out of domestic materials. And because of this has evoked a sense of humor, a sense of fun, people tend to share this more than the conspiracy theory. And when people see this picture, they refrain from sharing the conspiracy theories afterward. So it serves as a vaccination against virus of the mind, that is to say, the sense of outrage prompted by conspiracy theories. And eventually, this died down, this whole panic buying died down in just 24 hours. And we discovered the original person who shared this conspiracy theory was a tissue paper reseller. And so use analytics in a way that does not harm the public speech, that doesn't harm the freedom of assembly and the press, but instead rely on humor that appeals to the entire population. It's not exclusive humor. When the premier makes fun of himself, everybody laugh. It doesn't offend anyone. And when the press conference from the Minister of Health and Welfare gets translated by the dogge meme, this is a dog that lives with the participation officer, the person who dedicates their time to engage with the internet. There's one team in every ministry, and the Minister of Health and Welfare's participation officer lives with this dog. So whenever there's new idea that need to spread, that's worth spreading, they just take a picture of the dog and say, indoor, you need to maintain 3 dogs length. Outdoor, you need to maintain 2 dogs distance. That's physical distancing. You must remember to cover your mouth and nose when sneezing. And you do not, if you wear a mask, it reminds you to wash your hand and not put your hand to your mouth. Again, this relies on analytics to tell us what rings kind of resonance with the population, but we do not use it to censor speech. We use it to promote the humor over rumor playbook. So I hope that's making sense. I hope my sound is getting through.
I can see
And so
there is another interesting question, and I just want to complement it. Twitter wanted to predict flu epidemic by machine reading posts. Is that a future? And I would like to ask you, in this situation where the social media space is poisoned by trolls and other stuff, do you think this is a good idea? Do you think this is still alive?
Well, I think what is important here, as I said, is by people who genuinely want to contribute to the public good by promoting pro-social social media. So I'm not against the social media as a way to make trends visible or to highlight interesting trends. What I am against is the use of the reply button by automated or synthetic avatars that will then take away the room for genuine discourse. And so this focus on taking away the reply button is actually essential. This is the core of all the system that we use. If you can think if Slido has a reply button, people may be focused on attacking each other's arguments right on Slido instead of focusing on the question that everybody feel as important. The same way when we hold a coronavirus counter coronavirus hackathon or the co-hack hackathon, we use a technology called Polis that makes people vote yes or no on each other's ideas on, for example, how to make a smooth transition to a post-corona world. But when we do it, we do not have a reply button. So always after this kind of conversation, we can very clearly see people's consensus on things instead of promoting dissent and things like that. So my answer to this question is yes, if this is a pro-social media, but no, if this prompts antisocial behavior and inauthentic behavior, and you can design this right into the interaction fabric. For example, if I choose Slido, this shows my value of trying to promote more pro-social engagement from society. And if I choose Polis, it shows that I want people to, although they see each other having different positions, we want people to highlight their common values. So this is what the screen looks for a live conversation. And this was not the coronavirus hackathon, although it's the same interface. This was the interface when people deliberated how to introduce Uber to Taiwan. And now Uber operates its own taxi association called the Q Taxi. And this is because the people's consensus was that they have to do the same passenger liability insurance and so on as other taxi drivers, while allowing for other more dynamic pricing structure. And every time we see like Slido, this kind of picture where there's far more consensus statements than the 1 or 2 or 5 ideological statements that takes people apart. So I think this idea has merit, but Twitter need to leave the moderation part as a collaborative intelligence between human learning and machine learning, and not leaving it as an entirely machine learning way of moderation that I think is more dangerous than it sounds like. So do we move to other Slido questions, or does the moderator want to ask follow-up questions?
If you see some question that is reliable for you, there is a one. Do you rely mostly on your own ICT administration and development, or outsourced ICT issues? Problem in Czech Republic is that we outsourced all ICT knowledges.
Yeah, I want to make a distinction between ICT and digital. ICT is where people talk to machines, or rather machines talking to machines, as it were. And digital is where people talk to people. When I become the digital minister, many people confuse that role with that of an ICT minister. While we do outsource many of the ICT procurements to vendors, we always do the digital part, which is the user, I don't say user, the human experience, the journey of service and things like that, with only in-house as well as social sector partnership. I would use one example. When we started to see that the masks need to be rationed, I showed you a map, and that map was not procurement. It was a civic technologist who built such a map to allow for people to report where are the nearby places that still have masks in store. And this is like Ushahidi. This is like user contributed, human citizen contributed map. And very quickly, the government see this, and it's like the civil service accepted the social sector specification. We become like the vendor of the civic hackers, and we ensure that instead of relying on citizens to report the mask availability, we work with all the pharmacy to provide real-time availability every 30 seconds, just like a distributed ledger. So if you go to the pharmacy, swipe your national health card, collect 9 masks if you're an adult, 10 if you're a child every 2 weeks, you can see actually the increase the stock number by 9 or 10 in a couple of minutes, and if it instead grows, then of course you know the system is broken and you will call 1922. So this is participatory accountability. We make sure that we don't outsource, we rather crowdsource. When people see that there's a good application of the analytics or of the visualization, we just take it as the government offering. And so I think this is of vast importance that we do not confuse IT or ICT with digital. I always say that my role as the digital minister is not about the IT technology, which would be SDG 9, industrialization and infrastructure. Rather, my work is in SDG 17, which is to ensure that people can have reliable data across sectors, to encourage effective partnership across sectors, and using open innovation to work with international community on these sort of things. And I think that is my definition of digital, apart from that of IT.
I have one question that I'm interested in. You mentioned collaborative intelligence, and I guess this is the source of the data. So we are trying to collect more and more data. Are we still able to process them? Shouldn't be there, for example, artificial intelligence that will process the data from the collaborative intelligence that we collected?
Yes, so in Taiwan, when we say AI, we mean assistive intelligence. And assistive intelligence is the idea of, instead of trying to fight with human judgment, it assists the sense-making and human judgment. So instead of a showdown between human and machine, it becomes a conversation between human and machine. And what you're seeing here is my office. Literally, my office is a park, the Social Innovation Lab. Anyone can walk in from the street and have 40 minutes of my time if they agree to have the transcript published online. And some time, like a couple years ago, there's a bunch of people who brought in AI to help us navigating the street and that self-driving vehicles. And what we have done is, instead of just rolling out to replace drivers, we work with the nearby flower market so that people can use it as a shopping cart that moves with the people who shop. You can just shop some flower, put into it, it will just follow the human beings in the flower market, so you can do hands-free shopping. And for that, it needs to signify who it's following. So instead of one eye, it needs to have two eyes. It needs to navigate the city, responding to the person who it's following, and so on. And so what we have learned, of course, is being rolled out now as self-driving buses and so on in Taipei City starting next month. But this is based on the social norm that has already been agreed as helpful to the society, and allows any human to signify to the assistive intelligence that it needs to stop, that it needs to make an explanation of what it's doing. Basically, the respect of machines to the social norms, as well as the accountability. That's to say, the ability to explain why it's making such decisions that are still of the utmost importance when we're using assistive intelligence. As you would if you hire an assistant, you will trust the assistant to act on your best interest and give explanations when they make decisions. If the assistant cannot do these two things, that's not a good assistant. You will probably fire the assistant. And we need to make the same when we enroll AI, to say assistive intelligence, to our society.
There is just mention that you have a fantastic office and you do fantastic work. I think our ministers doesn't have office like this. There is a question with 3 likes. Dear Madam Minister, do you perceive changes in public opinion about data privacy during the COVID-19?
Yeah, this is a great question. What we have observed is that the COVID-19 is a great amplifier. In Taiwan, because we operate in a constitutional limit, we do not have declare any emergency. So everything we do need to be approved by the parliament and subject to parliamentary oversight. And because of this, we tend to only encourage innovations that are respectful of privacy. For example, we have not rolled out any Bluetooth-based contact tracing apps. we have instead enforced a strict border quarantine. And that is preferable because it has a very limited time. It's just 14 days where you go to a quarantining hotel, or if you have a large enough home, you stay at home. And that's the extent of the privacy harm. And of course, everybody knows that you cannot move out of the hotel or your apartment. Because otherwise it will be breaking the quarantine. But otherwise, we do not track people's whereabouts. And so it tends to amplify what the society already believes in. In Taiwan, when we believe in social sector control of data, of joint controllership, it promotes this kind of innovation. And you can see it in all the civic technologies that I just demonstrated. But in other jurisdictions where they believe instead of the state transparent to the citizen should be transparent to the state, then the coronavirus amplify their surveillance state tendencies. And in places where people place more trust in the global multinational capitalist companies, then of course that amplifies those trust also. So I think coronavirus is a great amplifier, but it doesn't have a preset direction. It depends on where the social norm was in the beginning.
As you mentioned, it's a great amplifier, and it's also a great chance to make some, important changes. We can see that we change how the public space is used for bicycles, for cars. We trying to reorganize it for people be in a more comfortable distance from each other. What is the first thing we should do? How we should use this advantage of having this situation with COVID-19? What is the first thing we should do in the context of data and digital world at all?
Yeah, as I mentioned, in Taiwan, when we run the CoHack hackathon, most of the ideas that proposes was for the community to own its own data, for people who care about each other's health to share each other's health data. But it doesn't automatically publish it, nor do they just submit it to a so-called cloud service. Rather, it lives entirely in their phone. Actually, all the top three cases in the CoHack.tw hackathon from many countries, and people are focusing on this idea. So, for example, the logboard help you to record your own health information before you arrive at hospital, but it only when you're contributing to contact tracing, contribute the one-time link, which only contains the data needed for contact tracing without sacrificing anybody else's privacy and autonomy. Using distributed ledgers, use this as a kind of trusting circle between the entire community, so that data-driven advice can be given without compromising anybody's autonomy when it comes to data. And Gemini data helps to use such data to make storytelling visualization devices that helps the people to communicate from the public health officials to decision makers as well as to everybody. So there is a kind of data democracy, for lack of a better term, that makes sure that everybody can have visibility into the not only fiduciary in the financial sense, but also control sense of where their data is contributed and what social impact is making. We even run a data collaborative at taiwancanhelp.us. So if you go to taiwancanhelp.us, you see who can help, and you see Taiwan Can Help. And you see what exactly is people's contributions. There's even a crash course on the coronavirus by our previous vice president, Dr. Chen Jianren, who wrote a textbook on epidemiology. But what I want to show you is the donation for humanitarian assistance. We donated many millions of masks, and there's some citizens here that opted in to reveal their names because these are their quota. As I said, there's 9 or 10 masks per 2 weeks. If they already have some masks in store, they can choose to not to purchase these and instead dedicate it for international humanitarian community. So this is my name in kanji characters. So you know that I have dedicated 6 masks for international humanitarian, but other 3 people who share my name, maybe with an extra character, we together dedicated 36 masks. And this is entirely opting in. The open data as you can see, half of people choose to remain anonymous, and it only has 3 fields: the date, not even the minute or second, the date, the dedicated mask, as well as their name if they choose to reveal it. And so because we inform people of the public impact this is making for diplomacy, as well as people know exactly what the private identifiable information will be, people are actually very willing to curate that sort of joint data controllership because they know that this will not be used for any other purpose rather than its originally dedicated purpose. So the shared sense of purpose and the shared sense of control is very important if we are going to build a data democracy. With the pandemic as a backdrop that prompts people to help each other more.
Well, we have a new question. As an architect, I would like to know your opinion about how all this can be used in advantage for the future post-pandemic office spaces. What can be improved?
This is a very interesting question. So my point of my office being a park is just half of the story. While I am in the park every morning to evening in Wednesday, so you can talk to me every Wednesday, and actually the mornings of Monday and Thursday too. But in Tuesday and the weekends, I'm not in Taipei. I'm not in the capital city. Rather, I tour around Taiwan and make sure that I join the people who are closer to the pain, closer to the places where there's no high-speed connection through high-speed rails. We ensure that everybody have high-speed broadband, because in Taiwan, broadband is a human right. Even if you're on the top of Taiwan, almost 4,000 meters high, you're still guaranteed to have 10 megabits per second for just 15 euros per month for unlimited data connection. If you don't, it's my fault. Personally, it's my fault. So because of that, no matter how remote I go, I can talk to the local people. And I go by myself, sometimes with the help of the cultural interpreters, like with indigenous languages, of which there's like 20 different national languages in Taiwan. But we always connect back to the Social Innovation Lab in Taipei, and for the 12 ministries related to social innovation to send their section chiefs to the same room. So instead of people being constrained by mobility in physical spaces, for the past 2 years, we've been doing this kind of connected spaces that connect with all the municipalities, and so that people can look at like a fishbowl, the local people's town hall. For the local people, they don't have to learn typing or any sort of writing, whatever. They just go to the town hall, they speak their mind, and facilitate the mutual conversation between them and the municipal officers, or in Taipei, the central government officers. So they don't have to copy any documents around, but can instead answer each other's questions with the idea of a extended reality, or XR. And this kind of XR-based policymaking, I would argue, is more responsive, more inclusive, because it's not relying on representatives. Rather, it is representing the local people's needs and fears and hopes to the entire nation, and we use internet to amplify their voices, not to replace their voices.
I recognize that people are playing online games more and more in these days, and they are using cloud services and other stuff. Do you think this is opportunity for development, for finding new ways how to use them, or chance to collect more data, more interesting data that we didn't have before? Because people that were not, their habit was not to using online, maybe streaming, chat rooms and other stuff. Do you think this is something that can move us into the future rapidly?
Certainly. I think in Taiwan, even though we did not lock down the schools, our schools and businesses remain open. Still, the schools recognize that because of the fact that we're all wearing masks, it's harder to make communications, to read each other's expressions if you're wearing mask all the time. Actually, the subtle nonverbal expressions are lost if you're wearing a mask all the time. And so video conference extended reality is actually more lively than face-to-face meeting for the first time in the educator's career. And so they all learned to own their video conference devices, and we use GC Meet and other open source platforms. They can use a very old computer in their school, but still serve a very large classroom, and it enable people to be in smaller satellite places where it's easier to keep physical distancing and still join each other. And of course, more data can be collected this way, but I think the point here is that the data is collaboratively, the sense making is collaboratively understood by everybody. And this is why in Taiwan we don't say digital literacy or data literacy or media literacy. We say media competence, digital competence, data competence, because we recognize all the students in the school, they're actually producers and not just consumers of media and data. And I think that is the direction where the K-12 education, lifelong education should go.
Thank you, Minister, for joining us. Thank you for being the very first guest of today's Congress. It was amazing to hear these things from you, and for me, it was an honor to meet you, even on the screen.
Thank you, and have a good local time. Live long and prosper.
Have a great day. That was Audrey Tang, a Taiwanese free software programmer and also minister with our portfolio, youngest minister in the history of Taiwan.